Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Collective Mining Limited. Please note you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Ari Sussman, Executive Chairman of the Board of the OTCQX Best 50 Company Collective Mining Limited, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol CNLMF and on the TSX under the symbol CNL. Welcome, Ari.
Thank you for having me, and welcome everyone to this presentation. Quickly, let's get a disclaimer out of the way. I will be making forward-looking statements, and we are protected with this disclaimer in place. I'm going to move relatively quickly so we leave some time for Q&A. Before I get into the details of what we're doing at Collective Mining, I thought it would be useful to update the cap structure. There are currently 65.8 million shares outstanding. The pro forma cash, which was as of December 31st, but including a financing that completed on March the 4th, was $28 million. We have warrants expiring this month on April the 25th at Canadian $3.25. Most have already been exercised. There's some more left to come, but we fully expect them to all come in, given the share price is currently trading around $4.50 Canadian. And with that, our treasury will be replenished. There were 7 million of those warrants. And so we're in really great shape from a financial point of view. We have plenty of money for this year and lots of money for next year. The budget for calendar 2024 is approximately $20 million. These are US dollars. And we will drill around 40,000 meters. I'm going to go into the details of that in a minute, but there are 4 rigs now operating at site, and sometime in the next 20 to 30 days, the 5th and final rig for the year will arrive. Last thing to take note is the structure of the company, of the shares. So management, insiders, plus strategic own approximately 50% of the shares. Those that follow us will note we brought a strategic investor into the company, announced on March the 4th, a sub 10% strategic, so an unnamed investor, but it is a mining company and someone we're happy to welcome. There's been not much change in the management team. I won't go through this in detail. I will say that we're sad to see Ken Thomas just retired from our board on April the 10th. Ken, was with us for a very long time, more than 10 years working together, and a legendary mine builder. We wish him well in his retirement, and he can enjoy his life. For those that aren't familiar with our model, we try to do is to bring the best minds, from an international perspective to the table, and then have those minds work with our talented but relatively young Colombian management team. And so we have Omar Osma is the CEO and president. I'm the executive chairman. Omar lives in Colombia, is Colombian. He is boots on the ground operating. Paul Begin is out of Toronto, our CFO. David Redding is a special advisor, as is Dick Tostel. David is well known in the mining circles. He was the founding partner of Mark Bristow in creating Randgold and led the exploration team that made multiple large discoveries in West Africa primarily. And Richard Tostel is one of the world's top porphyry experts, and that is the type of setting or geological setting that we are exploring. So we're in really good shape. As we evolve the company and we grow into more development stage, we'll bring on engineering talent to support that phase of the company. Colombia continues to be a good jurisdiction, and I want to make this point strongly to everyone that is listening. Yes, it has a left-wing government. Yes, that is not ideal. Obviously, we'd all prefer a right-wing or a center right-wing government, more pro-business. But the country has very strong rule of law. It has the same government setup as the United States, meaning excellent check and balances between the national government and the state level government. And a long story short is that mines are getting permitted in Colombia. If you look at the bullet point at the bottom of that page, there are now 6 mining licenses that have been issued since this new government took over. 4 of those are open pit. They range from nickel to rare earth to limestone, and 2 gold mines have been permitted as underground mines, including Marmato, which you can see on the map, which is directly contiguous to the red star, which are our 2 properties, Guayabalas and San Antonio. I will show you in a minute, but Marmato is in full construction, and obviously we will benefit from that. I am a very strong believer that the southern arc of South America, so the Ecuador, Colombia, Guyana, Suriname, and Brazil countries, are going to lead the Americas in minerals and deposits and future mines for the transition that we are facing. And so I think this is one of the countries you really want to be in, and a 10-month permitting timeline at the national government by law makes this very attractive. Compare that to the United States where I live, and the best estimates are 15 years if you can get a mine permitted. Canada is a little better than that, but not much better. So things can move quickly, and we're fortunate to be here, and we will take advantage of it. Within Colombia, we are in a department which is named Caldas. If we were to pick a place to go do mining, this would be it, for a number of reasons. Number one, it's a small department, and the historic and famous Marmato mine is operating here. Marmato is the 2nd oldest continuously producing mine in the Americas at more than 500 years. So as one can imagine, everyone in this department has mining in their lineage in one way, shape, or form. Secondly, this department has the most universities per capita, hence the highest education rate, and the result is a very low unemployment rate. If you want a job in Caldas, you can get one. It's not stricken with too much poverty, and the result of that is excellent security. Where we are is really wonderful, because not only does it have a good security, but it also has skilled labor. You can see on the right the title map. An important point before I go into the excitement of the Guayabalas project are a few things I want to address. Number one, infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure. So you see the Pan American Highway that's cutting that image roughly from a north to south line. So we have road access right through both our Guayabalas and San Antonio projects. We will only talk about Guayabalas today for sake of time. It is our flagship. Additionally, Colombia generates the vast majority of its power through hydro, okay, and including Caldas, all hydro, and those hydro lines with lots of capacity abut that Pan American Highway. You can't go anywhere on either of our projects more than 3 kilometers without having access to high voltage hydropower. So that makes it really excellent. And thirdly, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we have skilled mining labor in this area. So those 3 are a trifecta for success. The elevation is the last thing I'll add. It peaks here at 2,000 meters above sea level on our ground. Remembering that we're close to the equator, so you want some elevation to make working conditions pleasant. This area, averages, if you think in metric, somewhere between 25 and 28 degrees Celsius all year. You can work 12 months a year, 365 days without any problem. I've now zoomed in on Guayabalas, okay, and what you can see here are a bunch of semicircles. The one that is at the bottom center of the page that is not complete, that is the Marmato mine. That is in full construction. Aris Mining, who owns it, received their license last summer, our summer of 2023, and they started construction approximately in November. All of the mining symbols that you see on that page represent permitted operating gold mines under Colombian law. We are in an established camp. So, if you want to go to an area where the likelihood is you will be permitted, this is probably the best one can find, given there's already 10 licenses in this area. It's a designated mining area. All of those ovals you see sitting above the 4.5 kilometer line are the porphyry targets that we generated. The generative work started in 2021 and continues today. This is a really well endowed area geologically, and the proof is in the drilling. You know, we generate targets, we find exciting surface expressions of metal. We don't do anything unique or special, but we go and drill and we hit. Okay, and what you see from sample intervals from each of those discoveries is bulk tonnage intercepts at attractive gold equivalent grades. We report here in gold equivalent because gold is our most dominant metal that we find. But at Apollo, which is second from the bottom with assay results, which is our flagship, that is a high-grade gold, silver, copper, and tungsten system. So we do have transition metals. The whole area has silver. We have some copper, and tungsten is an important one. I mentioned we have 4 rigs turning. We currently have a rig turning at Trap. We have 1 turning at Apollo. We have 1 turning at Olympus Deep. And the 4th one, which started less than 2 weeks ago, is turning at Box, which is listed under new targets for 2024. Each of those 3 targets will see drilling this year. We're about 450 meters into the first hole at Box. For what it's worth, the surface sampling at Box has yielded the highest grades of precious metal that we have found on the entire property, and it is over a large area measuring approximately 1 kilometer squared and open. So we're looking forward to seeing what might come from those drilling. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail next on Apollo, then we'll talk quickly about Olympus Deeps, and then Trap, and then we can open it up to Q&A. Before doing that, I forgot, I apologize. I think this is an excellent look at the project as a long section. So we've collapsed the targets onto the plane of the page and you get to see the topography. 2 takeaways from this slide, which I think are important for viewers. Number 1, you get the 3rd dimension, the vertical. Okay, so these are big systems. We've drilled Apollo down approximately to the deepest intercept, 1.2 kilometers from surface, and we remain open at depth in all of these systems for further growth. Secondly, we have this gap in the center where it says new target generation in 2024, where we haven't done the work on surface yet. You might ask why, and the answer is simply human nature. Look how much easier the topography is in the other areas. It's more work. However, that is our goal for this year, is to fill that area in with surface work. I have no crystal ball to know what we might generate, but one would imagine we might generate something given the amount of metal we're seeing at Trap, which is a new discovery announced in January of this year. You know, and Olympus Deep's portion was announced only in January of this year as well. So that's highly prospective ground along this 4.5 kilometer long porphyry trend. Apollo is a porphyry system. They all are. This one comes directly to surface in the southern purple outline area. It outcrops in remarkably high grade. As mentioned, this is a gold, silver, copper, and tungsten system. We are very blessed here with good metallurgy. We put out our final phase 1 metallurgical results last week. Long story short, we expect on a commercial scale in the future to recover well over 90% of the gold, to recover well over 90% of the copper, maybe 75 to 85% of the silver, and maybe 70 to 75% of the tungsten. Amazing. We're going to make both a gold doré when we have low copper, and we're going to make a copper precious metal rich concentrate when we have high copper, and the concentrate grades we announced last week are truly remarkable. You know, both cons had copper grades between 25 and 30%, silver well north of 1,000 grams per ton, and gold sitting around 30 grams per ton. So truly blessed. There's a bunch of drill holes, and this really gives you a flavor for Apollo. Big bulk intercepts at attractive grades. Again, reminding you it starts right at surface in the south. The system is open. It's growing at depth, and it's moving in the northeast direction. That black line you see from pad 14 going to the northwest, that is the hole that we are currently drilling. That is at about 500 meters in length. The hope is that we will demonstrate a significant step out to the northwest with that hole, both vertically. It could be our deepest hole, assuming it's mineralized to the end, and it will extend the system. This year is about growth at Apollo. We're going to grow it for 1 more year. Next year, we will go to infilling and then ultimately a resource estimate. This is clearly a multi-million ounce gold equivalent system. The question is, how big can we get it this year before we start to infill it? Very exciting and grade right at surface. This is the only slide you'll be able to see in the presentation for Apollo where you can get a look at the mix of the commodities, so the gold, silver, and copper that make up the gold equivalent. So I urge you to take a look or go visit our presentation to get more detail on that. One thing I will add is in the portion of Apollo that comes right to surface, there's about a 20 to 30 meter thick blanket of oxide mineralization, and the oxidation has actually upgraded the gold. So anywhere on those assays you see the word include, INCL period, that is in weathered or oxidized material, and you can see how high those oxide grades are. They're really attractive. Last thing on Apollo, what does it look like? So on the right, that's a cross section. It's a porphyry host. All that light blue color is porphyry host. The purple dashes represent the overprinting high-grade veins, and the dark blue portion is the area where it's been brecciated. It's getting wider at depth. The brecciated portion is the high grade, and this thing is getting thicker at depth, not just growing vertically, but growing laterally at depth too. The discovery that we announced in January of this year was what we call Olympus Deeps. This is the deep portion of Olympus. We were drilling a hole from pad 14 almost due north. If you look on your slide, it is numbered APC 88-D1. And we were running out of time going into Christmas break and had extra meters and we're under budget. And so we said, no time to start another hole, let's let it run. Okay, and that is what we did. And so we initially cut Apollo 497 meters at 1.8 grams per ton gold equivalent, excellent intercept. We went into a dead zone, an area where there's a post-mineral or a late intrusion affecting the host body. But then we exited that and went into a new set of mineralization where we cut 202 meters at 2.16 grams per ton gold equivalent, and that hole bottomed in mineralization as we hit a fault and couldn't advance. The hole was about 980 meters in length. We've subsequently drilled 3 holes, just finishing the last one, OLD1. You can see them because they have a maroon color pointing to the potential mineralized zones. Those assays will be back in something like 6 or 7 weeks from now. They're being sent to the lab as we speak. I should add that the Olympus area was first discovered with drilling in 2022, but the shallow portion of it, right? So you can see the results kind of on the top left of the image. That is just a sheeted vein system in a porphyry host. It doesn't have the copper, it doesn't have anything else, it's gold and silver, but those are still attractive intercepts. And when you think about Olympus relative to our neighbor at Marmato, which by the way is 9 million ounces of measured, indicated, plus inferred, there's some similarities. You know, upper level sheeted vein system with a porphyry system below. That is what we see here. You know, so there's more than 1,000 vertical meters at Olympus to test, with a giant gap between the shallow mineralization, the deeper mineralization, and that's something we will continue to do and look forward to the next assay results. I think the interesting point here is when one envisions a development scenario for Apollo, right, there will be an underground component for sure. At Apollo, it will start at pit and then it will go underground, and it'd be hard to imagine not pulling some material out of Olympus. The question is how much of that material we'll be able to pull, and this will grow this area, you know, and you're looking at something quite large potentially. Last thing I'll talk about is trap. We've moved approximately 3.5 kilometers to the northeast along that porphyry trend. You can see it in the inset in the top right. And so trap is early, okay, but very exciting. In fact, I'm maybe most excited by it of the new discoveries for a couple of reasons. But one, let's start with how it was discovered. We had a tiny little outcrop, you know, maybe 10 square meter, where we saw porphyry veins and we saw a lot of white alteration, which is a type of phyllic alteration. And we couldn't really map the orientation of the veins, so we built 3 pads, T-pad 1, 2, and 3, and drilled in 3 different directions, from the south to the north, north to the south, and roughly the east to the west. And you can see the assay results, the 3 holes we've announced to date, the highlight being 646 meters at 0.81 grams per ton equivalent. That includes over 300 meters at just above a gram from right near surface. We've used some technology to look at the system both down the hole and in the core, And from that, we've been able to confirm, yes, it's a porphyry system, number one. Number two, we believe that the orientation of the system is to the west-northwest. So those two holes, 7A and 8A, which 8A is currently drilling, have drilled at what we believe is a good angle across the system. So we're crossing it. We know how to cross it now instead of drilling along it. We were blind earlier on. 7A is the one we're excited for. We cut more than 500 meters of mineralization. We expect assay results from trap at the end of this month of April. And what I can tell you from the core is we see a higher density of porphyry style veining. So hopefully that will mean we'll see more grade, right? Than 0.81 grams, for example, in hole TRC-2. So stay tuned on that. Results are soon. Optimistic. Last point I will add, if you look at the distance from T-pad 2, the pad, which is that black little square box, and the end of 8A, which is almost finished, that hole, that's already approximately 1,000 meters of kind of north-south length to the system. So it's big, it's open in all directions, and we look forward to getting next holes. We are drilling this as we speak, as I mentioned already. The last thing I will say, is, look, this is a pretty special situation. When you look at this project overall, and you think about Marmato sitting next door with 9 million resource ounces, and by the way, unknown millions mined historically, clearly millions given it's been mined for more than 500 years, one envisions a gold camp evolving here, right? We have the targets. Marmato is a single asset, doesn't have a lot of space for new targets on the ground, and we have all these targets. It's clear we have a multi-million ounce system. What that quantifies as will come next year, at least to start, from Apollo and one other system. Our goal is to bring two of these targets, Apollo being one, up into the resource stage together. And one might envision a camp, and I would define a camp as something that, with more than 25 million ounces of gold. Okay, we're not there yet. I don't want you to leave this call thinking we have 25 million ounces. We don't. But the potential is there for that. This is truly a blessed area, and we're really fortunate to be the ones that are exploring this. And, in mining, there's an old saying, when you have surprises and they're good, you tend to find a mine. That is the case here. Our surprises tend to be good. You can see our catalysts. Work continues. And with that, I'm going to start to read off the questions that have been asked, and I will answer them. Question 1, are you seeing anything interesting in the core of the first hole underway at Box? So let me start with the caveat that visuals rarely translate into what assays come back as, but I will say it is an extremely interesting hole. It's currently at about 450 meters in length. We cut a dead zone from surface as we expected. It was leached from weathering. We then went into, curiously, to copper-bearing porphyry before transitioning into a zone which is overprinted by the high-grade late-stage porphyry veins. That hole is currently drilling. We like what we see there. There's clearly a large hydrothermal fluid system there, fingers and toes and everything else crossed of what might come there, but we like it a lot. Question 2. Targets in the south of the property at Guayabalas are close together. Is there potential development opportunities, simultaneous development opportunities once a mine is built? Well, that's an interesting question, actually, and a good one. The short answer is yes. Box, we just started drilling, so I don't know what's going to be there, but Box has the lowest point of elevation on the property, and there's a huge valley at its base. So I would envision that if Box works out, you might build a portal in that low point of elevation, have your plant, in that valley abutting the portal, and you would tunnel in from Box through Tower into Apollo and Olympus. The distance of an underground tunnel would only be like 2 to 2.5 kilometers. So we're not talking a great distance. That is a possibility, but all of that is subject to a lot of drilling that hasn't been done, a lot of test work on many things, including geotech, metallurgy at Box, tower, etc., and then all economic studies around that. But that is a good question. Number 3, is there any interest from major mining companies? Yes, obviously, we took a strategic investment from a large mining company. We do have CAs signed with major mining companies. We ultimately do want to sell this. For those that know us, we previously built a mine and sold it as it was in ramp up to commercial production in Colombia. This time we'd like to sell before construction. So yes, we have a data room, and there are some companies active in there. Next question. Do you plan to keep one drill rig at Trap, or have you stopped there? No, we are drilling there as we speak, and the question maybe would be better asked, do you plan on increasing the number of rigs there? And that will be dependent on the results that come in the assays due at the end of this month. Next question, what are the near-term catalysts? Drilling, and more drilling. Next set of assays is Trap, as I've mentioned, due this month. Sometime 2 weeks after that will be Apollo holes, and then that will then be followed by Olympus holes and box holes. We're going to have a heavy flow of news, in terms of drilling on multiple targets, and hoping we make a new discovery at box. Let's see what comes. Next question. Why does the 9.9% strategic want to remain anonymous? Well, both of us wanted it to remain anonymous, and that's because it's under 10%. There's no legal requirement to announce an investor over 10. From our perspective, we wanted to keep the investor under 10% because, if they became larger than that, it could ultimately impact potential M&A. Okay, so the best thing we can do was keep it that way, and that's why it was set up that way. And we're happy to have them as a shareholder. Next question: how big can breccias get? Well, they can become huge. Our Apollo breccia this is not the amount of gold. I wouldn't do a calculation when I say this to try and multiply by grade because it's not all mineralized. But I would wager we're approaching 300 million tons and growing. Giant mines, Los Bronces, which is Anglo-American, and Codelco in Chile, that is a 3 billion ton brecciated porphyry system. NGEX has, a very 2 billion tons, give or take, in their brecciated porphyry. So these can get very big indeed. Next question. Is your goal to build a mine or sell the asset prior to construction? I answered that. We plan on selling it prior to construction. And the last question I have is, how do you envision a production scenario? Do you think you will have a starter pit? Well, obviously that will be subject to studies, but yes, I do envision that because Apollo comes right to surface. I mean, literally, it starts at 0 meters. There's not even overburden to strip off. So I think that's true. One more question just came in. Can you speak to infrastructure for Guayabalis? Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. It is really good. I mean, we're right off the Pan American Highway. There's green hydropower right close to site, and we have roads throughout the project, as well as a ready and eager skilled labor force in the area. One more question, and that's it. Why do you want to sell instead of constructing? It's enjoyment of what one wants to do with a company. So, I think construction is best left to larger companies. We've done it. We're in a much higher inflationary environment than we were even 5 years ago. And I think that would be best left for someone larger that has more skill than us. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. As always, please feel free to reach out. Our email address is ir@collectivemining.com, and visit our website at www.collectivemining.com. Thank you to the OTC